The Opium Wars, Empire, Addiction, and China's Century of Humiliation. Introduction: The Smoke That Changed the World. In the early 19th century, two empires, one ancient, one ascendant, clashed in a struggle that would reshape global history. The Qing dynasty, ruling over a civilization that had flourished for millennia, faced an unprecedented threat, not from invading armies, but from a narcotic. Opium, smuggled into China by British merchants, was rotting the nation from within. When China fought back, the British Empire responded with cannon fire. This is not just a story of war, it is a tale of greed, addiction, imperial arrogance, and a civilization brought to its knees. The roots of conflict. China and the West collide the Celestial Empire under the Qing China's view of the world. The Qing dynasty, 1644-1912, saw itself as the Middle Kingdom, the center of civilization. Foreigners were barbarians, tolerated only at the edges of the empire. The Canton system. Since 1757, all Western trade was restricted to the port of Canton, Guangzhou. Foreign merchants lived in cramped factories, forbidden from entering the city. Silver and tea. Britain bought vast quantities of Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain, but had little to sell in return. Silver flowed out of Britain and into China, creating a trade imbalance that London could not sustain. Britain's opium solution, the narcotic weapon that broke a civilization. The birth of a deadly trade, how Britain turned opium into an imperial weapon. By the late 18th century, the British Empire faced an existential economic crisis, one that would lead to one of history's most destructive narco-trafficking operations. The problem was simple. China had everything Britain wanted, but Britain had nothing China needed. The East India Company's desperate gambit. The Silver Drain Crisis. Between 1760 to 1800, Britain imported over 30 million pounds of Chinese tea annually, but its own goods, wool, clocks, mechanical trinkets, held little appeal for the Chinese. The result? Tens of millions of silver taels hemorrhaged from British coffers. The Bengal opium monopoly. After securing control of Bengal following the Battle of Plassey, 1757, the British East India Company, EIC, realized opium, grown cheaply in India, could be the perfect commodity to force open China's markets. From medicine to mass addiction, opium had been used in China medicinally for centuries. But the British scaled production to industrial levels, refining raw opium into smokable paste, vastly more addictive. The mechanics of smuggling. How opium flooded China. The country traders, British private merchants like Jardine and Matheson, operated outside official EIC channels, using fast clipper ships to evade Qing authorities. The receiving ships, moored off Linton Island near Canton, these floating warehouses stored opium until Chinese smugglers, often working with corrupt officials, transported it inland. The coastline racket. By the 1820s, opium was being unloaded at Whampoa, Namoa, and Fujian, with local officials bribed to look the other way. The human catastrophe. Opium's ravages on Chinese society. The addicted millions. By 1835, 12 million Chinese were habitual users, from dock workers wasting away in dens to scholars neglecting the imperial exams. The Silver Famine. As opium imports surged to 40,000 chests annually, 1838, silver reserves evaporated. Peasants paid taxes in copper, but the state demanded silver. Currency inflation crippled the poor. The corrupt bureaucracy. Even the Qing viceroy in Canton was implicated. One official, Zhou Suijian, was caught smuggling 1,400 chests, enough to addict a city. Voices from the ruins. First-hand accounts of opium's destruction. A Qing official's lament. Men sell their plows for smoke, women their dowries. The streets are lined with skeletal figures, their minds lost to the pipe. Lin Zexu, 1838. A British merchant's brutal honesty. We can no more stop the opium trade than we can stop the sun. The Chinese will pay in silver or in blood. James Matheson, Jardine and Matheson, co-founder and Addict's Descent. Diaries from Canton opium dens describe users selling children into slavery for one more pipe. The failed crackdowns. Qing attempts to stop the tide. The Jiaqing Emperor's bans. 1796 to 1820. Executed dealers, burned pipes, yet imports quadrupled under his reign. The Daoguang Emperor's dilemma, 1820 to 1850. Debated legalization versus eradication. Chose the latter, triggering war. The British justification, hypocrisy and profit. Free trade as a pretext. British PM Lord Palmerston framed the trade as free exchange, ignoring addiction. The lobbyists' power. Opium profits funded 25% of British India's budget. Merchants bribed newspapers to portray China as isolationist tyrants. The point of no return, Lin Zexu's fateful stand, the human destruction, 1839, Lin's seizure of 20,000 chests, worth $12 million then, $500 million today, forced Britain's hand. The merchants' revenge. Jardine personally lobbied Parliament for war, supplying detailed invasion plans. The Daoguang Emperor's impossible choice, 1838 to 1839. 1. A dynasty in crisis. By 1838, opium addiction had infiltrated all levels of Qing society. 30 to 50% of bureaucrats were habitual users. The Imperial Army's bannermen were often found smoking on duty. Silver reserves had dropped by 60% since 1800. The emperor received conflicting advice. Legalization faction argued for taxation and control. Suppression faction, led by Lin Zexu, demanded total eradication. 2. Lin Zexu. The scholar-warrior background, a jinshi, top-tier scholar, from Fujian with a spotless reputation, his 56-point memorial to the throne, detailed how opium destroyed families, fathers sell sons for smoke, warned of foreign contamination of Chinese culture, proposed death penalty for dealers and corrupt officials. 3. The Canton blockade, March 1839, Lin's arrival in Guangzhou, immediately arrested 1,700 Chinese dealers, confiscated 70,000 opium pipes in public bonfires, issued his famous letter to Queen Victoria, never delivered. The British response. Superintendent Charles Elliot ordered merchants to surrender opium, but secretly promised British government compensation for. The human destruction, June 1839. Logistics of destruction. 500 workers dug 3 massive trenches near human mixed opium with salt and lime before flushing to sea. Process took 23 days under armed guard. British merchants watched helplessly. Losses totaled £2 million, approximately $500 million today. Jardine and Matheson immediately dispatched ships to London, demanding action too. The road to war, 1839 to 1840. 1. The Palmerston Doctrine. The British Foreign Secretary's rationale claimed Lin's actions violated free trade principles, framed it as defense of British property, the destroyed opium. Secret memos show Jardine and Matheson helped draft war plans. 2. Parliamentary Showdown, April 1840, key speeches, William Gladstone. This flag of England waves in protection of infamous contraband, Lord Macaulay. We must teach the Chinese the price of insulting Britain. Final vote. 271 to 262 in favor of war. The slimmest majority for any 19th century British war. 3. The nemesis factor. Britain's secret weapon, first iron-hulled steam warship in Asian waters. Draft of just 5 feet could navigate Pearl River armed with 32-pounder cannons and Congreve rockets. Chinese defenses still relied on 16th century Portuguese-style forts. The Tiger's Mouth batteries at Humen hadn't been upgraded since 1809 the third. The War of Iron and Blood, 1841 to 1842. 1. Battle of Chwenpi, January 1841. British forces. 15 warships, including Nemesis Marine units with percussion-cap muskets. Qing forces. 200 war junks with outdated cannon land batteries still using matchlock firearms. Outcome. Entire Qing fleet destroyed in 4 hours. British casualties. 38 wounded, none killed. May 1841. The city's defenses. 40,000 Qing troops. Fire raft attacks. Burning boats sent downstream. British tactics. Systematically bombarded civilian areas. Demanded $6 million ransom to stop shelling. Aftermath. First appearance of anti-foreign placards. Birth of the Yangzhou Protocol, allowing foreign residents 3. Yangtze River Campaign, 1842. Strategic targets. Shanghai fell after 2-day bombardment. British ships reached Nanjing's walls by August. Psychological impact. Cut the Grand Canal. Paralyzing grain shipments showed British could strike at China's economic heart. 4. The Treaty of Nanking. Anatomy of a Humiliation. 1. Key Provisions Clause. Impact. Hong Kong ceded Britain gained permanent Asian base 21 million indemnity, approximately 3 years of Qing tax revenue, extraterritoriality, created foreign legal enclaves, fixed tariffs, removed China's right to said import duties. 2. The signing ceremony. August 29, 1842, aboard HMS Cornwallis. Qing delegates Qiying and Ilibu didn't understand international law. British insisted on kowtow refusal. Symbolic break with tradition. 3. Immediate consequences. Silver payments caused hyperinflation. Opium imports doubled within 5 years. First wave of Chinese emigration to work foreign factories. 5. Why this chapter matters. Corporate influence on war. How a private trading firm, Jardine and Matheson, helped start an imperial war military revolution. First conflict where steam power decisively defeated traditional forces, addiction as weapon, blueprint for later narco wars in Latin America. Need deeper analysis? I can add full translation of Lin's letter to Queen Victoria technical specs of Qing versus British artillery, economic modeling of the silver drain.